Dustin.
Hello, Huber.
It's been a crazy time lately. Not for any new reason, just
It's just been crazy.
It's just been crazy. Things are just still crazy.
You should start a show and just say, "Yeah, things have been crazy. I don't want to talk about it."
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. We never come back to it.
Never come back to it.
Or just frustratingly start the show with yeah, things are crazy. Oh, why is that, Hooper? I'll tell you after the show.
I'll tell you later.
Just every single day, it's like,
but I'm keeping this in.
Remind me to tell you after the show about that horrible illegal thing I did.
Yes.
All right. Hey, everybody.
Do you remember back in the day, people used to on Facebook put up what we would call Vaguebook statuses? They'd be really vague. Like it was because back in the day, it would be like, it would say Dustin is, and you'd have to fill in the blank because you couldn't just put whatever. So you'd be like, Dustin is upset at what happened today.
Yeah.
And then you'd have like all the comments like, what happened today? And you'd never answer them. Those people would never answer. And then they just want all the sympathy likes. And like, oh, look at this guy vague-booking again.
Vague-booking. Oh, boy. Did you ever do the song lyrics?
Oh, everybody did the song lyrics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Song lyrics, vague-booking.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
boy.
would at that point you would ignore the Dustin is and just put the song lyrics. So sometimes it would make sense, right?
Oh, yeah, I know.
But sometimes it wouldn't make sense at all.
I would not post it if it didn't make sense with is, because I was so hung up on is.
On the is.
And then when they got rid of it, I was like, I'm free. I'm free.
You're like the genie at the end of Aladdin.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like that Twilight Zone where I was like, I'm the only one left.
Yes.
All right. Well, speaking of the only one left, I feel sometimes when I watch it, there's no way I can make this transition work. When you watch a long movie, sometimes you can you get to the end and you turn your lights on and you're like, oh, I'm alone. But that only works if you began the film with other people who left because it was too long. That's my transition.
That's a 2 out of 10.
I know. It was horrible.
There's been worse, I'm sure.
It was terrible. Well, no, there have been funnier, but there have not been worse.
Okay, sure.
Transition. It wasn't funny or good.
Yes.
I'll give it a 1 out of 10. What was the thing? I'll give it 0 out of 5 PPs.
Yeah, 0 out of 5 PPs.
Or sorry,
out of 5 Ps.
Wait, no, it's 5 out of 5. Like I'd get up 5 times to pee during this.
Yes, there you go.
During that one joke. Like I'd go, I'd come back and be like, Mom, you know what? I don't think I'm done.
The fewer Ps, the better it is.
Yeah, it's like golf. It's the opposite of the star system. It's
correct.
The P's are.
Well, what's your P handicap?
I lost it in a horrible accident. That's my handicap.
Speaking of handicap.
Geez, none of those applies. So I over the weekend I rewatched the extended edition of the Fellowship of the Ring, which was awesome and long.
Yes.
But it was still great. And now that I've read this is the first time watching it after having read the books, and so I'm just like, oh, they got everything. It's so cool, you know.
Yeah.
So it just kind of got me. And then I had recently rewatched, I think last weekend, I had rewatched Interstellar for the first time, my first rewatch.
Sure.
And I was talking about how much I loved it with you guys. And then also over the weekend, I watched for the first time something you said you'd seen was Ford v Ferrari.
Yeah.
And so that's on Hulu, and that was a really, really, really solid movie.
Yep.
And so rather than like reviewing any of these, it just sort of got me thinking like this. I just kind of realized I was going to do Oppenheimer. I ran out of time, and I realized, these are all super long films. That's why I ran out of time. And it kind of just got me thinking, like, we talk about it all the time on the show, but we've never like sat and discussed like the actual issue itself of really long movies and how they're more of a thing now. And so this is not so much like an oral history of the long film, but it's sort of like, I kind of came up with like a short list of like when I think it's warranted and when it's not, because Kellen especially does not like it when movies are over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like that, especially if you're watching something at home at night. You're like, Jesus Christ, how long is this?
Yeah.
If you're going to a theater, you may not necessarily mind, you know, or care that much, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, it just depends on what the movie is. But like in general, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you have like, are you like me where like it's all about context, or are you generally opposed to a 2+ hour film in most cases?
No, it's all about context. And there are certainly movies that do deserve long run times. And there are certain movies that abuse long run times. So it depends. There's nothing worse than a film that overstays its welcome, but there's something really nice about a film that is long and then you realize you haven't checked your watch.
Yeah. Yeah. So I came up with some, like just a quick, like yes, no column basically of when I think a film is allowed to be long. And when it's not. Like if I were in charge of greenlighting movies and I was looking at like script pages, this would be like my pass fail system.
Okay.
I think your movie can be long if it is based on a true story.
Okay.
If it is epic sci-fi fantasy, generally.
Okay. Sure. Yep.
Well, and when paired with, and especially with literary adaptations, I think though that's like there's probably a couple other things I haven't thought of, but like that's my quick criteria for can this be long? And what all of those, and the reason all of those, you know, make the cut is detail. Detail is important because the detail of the source material is already there. And so to make it 90 minutes or 2 hours, this is where the gulf between the quality of the material in the source and the quality of the material in the adaptation will get bigger because you're either trying to establish rules or details or subplots in these categories. And a lot is lost from the source material if you're forcing it to be economical, because you're trying to trim down an existing story too much. And some of that is format necessity, but some of it's just too much. Because I always talk about how when you adapt something, most things are best told in the medium in which they were originally created. And that's why they're there and not over here. I can't think of many films that would be better told as books. Original films that would have been better told as books. I've read the novelization of Spider-Man. It's fine, but it's not like I'd rather see it the film. Right. I don't want to read a Spider-Man novel.
Right.
The fuck. I want to see him swinging.
Exactly.
Not read about him swinging without a picture of him swinging.
I don't want to use my imagination.
Yeah. So that's why it makes sense to me, because like, and I was thinking about, I was like, Interstellar's, Ford v Ferrari, true story, based on true story. So you want to give it time to breathe and for events to unfold and for lots of context to be given, because there's history that makes sense for the story. And it's, you got to do that. Interstellar, epic sci-fi fantasy, like that is, you're setting up a world, you're setting up the conditions. Here's what year it is. Here's the condition the earth is in. Here's what we're doing about it. And then all this detail makes it feel real versus just blah, blah, blah exposition. Now let's get to the next thing. It feels like more of an actual real tangible world if you take your time with setting it up. Do you agree with that criteria? Does that make sense to you? Is there any?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think that it's not confined to those areas for me,
right?
But those are the areas that it's more immediately justifiable.
I think so. Now, I think obviously what I've left out here and where I don't think over 2 hours is justified, for the most part, original screenplays, I don't think need to be more than 90, 120 pages,
Sure.
Action adventure movies don't need to be more than 2 hours long.
No.
Comedies. God, no.
Yeah.
90 minutes, please.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, right? Because like we're all susceptible to sitting down and watching 4 or 5 or 6 episodes of a comedy sitcom in a row. Right. So, but if you think about it, like, so that sounds like, oh, I'm not against long movies, but if you watch, or long comedies, but if you watch 4 episodes of The Office in a row, you're really only watching 80 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, it feels like 4 episodes, good Lord. But like, even if you watch 6 in a row,
yeah,
you've just watched 2 hours of content. It's really not that long. But if the question is, can a comedy ever be that long? Maybe
it could.
I can't think of a case. Like I can't think of a case study where like, oh, here's a long comedy that works really well. Because by and large, most of them are shorter. But yeah.
I think it also depends on if the comedy is being paired with another genre. That's like there's how long is let me see how long is. Okay, so I've talked about. Okay, here's a perfect example of the other way of this rule. So I reviewed however long back the Stanley Kramer film. It's a mad world. It's a comedy film from 1963. It's 2 hours and 39 minutes long. It's only 10 minutes shorter than Interstellar.
Okay.
Why does that film work? Because it's not just a comedy. It's like a big road trip movie. It has a big long plot that allows for more comedy if you lengthen it, because they can do more things and has a lot of characters. Yeah. Whereas a film like Dude, Where's My Car, not going to get funnier the longer it goes on, because it's just a simple comedy is all about simplicity and brevity. And so if you stretch it out for most material, it's going to overstay its welcome, and the pacing is going to be terrible because it's a one trick pony. The reason I grouped these together, these have less in common than the stuff that could be long. But anything that you're building from the ground up, like an original screenplay, or a genre that relies on one gimmick, like action or jokes, should be 90 to 100 minutes, because there's no reason for it not to be, because it's one thing. It's either jokes, which there's a shelf life to that. After a while, you just get tired of, it sounds really stupid and buzzkilly, but you kind of get tired of laughing, because after a while, you're just doing the same thing. You're just telling jokes. And it's like, okay, but I do want the story to end, because I'm not that emotionally invested in what's going on. I just want to see the plot conclude, but my patience is going to wear thin after a while. Sure. Action movies, set pieces. After a while, you're like, shit, another fight scene, another car chase. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there's diminishing returns on what you came to see. The promise of the premise, the promise of the genre, what got your ass in the seat in the first place.
Yep. Totally. Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, especially when it comes to comedies, you're right. It's better to get out of there when the audience is laughing rather than when they're tired of it.
Yeah.
And it is true. That's why like stand-up comedy tends to be fairly short. I mean, even like a comedy special is right around an hour. They usually don't go too much longer than that, maybe an hour 15, hour 20. But like, yeah, you don't want to overstay your welcome. But you're right. If you compare a comedy with another genre, then there's license for longer, for something longer. My thought is, because you mentioned 90 minutes, maybe 100 for an original screenplay, that sounds right, because you want to be able to tell an economic story.
Yeah.
Like as a screenwriter, as somebody who writes, it is very easy to get flowery with your language, and it's very easy to incorporate all of the details that you've thought up of this world. But you do have to ask yourself at some point, is all of that necessary? Is it all worth it? Should I do it all right now? And the answer a lot of times is no. You can get the point across very simply. And I find I really relate more and find myself invested more in a film that, one, leaves a little bit of mystery to it, to the world, but two, is economic about how they introduce me to the world. So if there's, a big, long chunk of exposition, I'm probably going to check out a little bit. If you can tell me that exposition in a clever way that's very quick, then I'm more likely to be able to, comprehend it and retain it. And likewise, we like to say like, oh, we need to know about our characters and, what's their backstory and where do they come from and all that. The truth is, as writers, it's important for us to create that, but it is not important for the audience to see that. So you can get, in a recent review, we talked about Ghostbusters. With Ghostbusters, there's not a lot of character, like deep character work that happens, but because of the dialogue that they choose for each of those main characters, you learn about those characters and what their view of life is based on their dialogue. So if you can write good dialogue, a lot of times that's all you need in order for me to understand who these characters are. So you don't have to say, well, you don't need the voiceover that goes, and then this character came from Harvard and studied in a GPA of 4.0. You don't need to tell me all of that because all you're doing is telling me this person is smart. You can, in their first line of dialogue, have them use vocabulary that shows me they're smart. Have them talk about something that proves their intelligence, and you don't have to waste my time with all of that. And I think as writers, we want to tell you everything, and you just don't have to.
Right. And especially, again, like if it's an original screenplay and you are building this from the ground up, like the format of a screenplay and movies should be economical, should be, depending on who you're handing it off to, or if you're the writer, director, or if you're not, but like as opposed to prose where it's encouraged to be flowery and descriptive and blue sky, because no producer has to highlight it and be like, oh fuck, we have to show a mountaintop.
We have to go to this place.
Put all this on screen. You can just kind of do whatever you want. But like, so whatever minority of writer these days is writing original films, like that's your opportunity to go, there's no reason this. I'm writing a film and I have an opportunity to write a film without the encumbrances of condensing source material. Yeah. Like I can just write a movie, you know? And so in that sense, like it doesn't need, if you're Quentin Tarantino, that's different, but that's a special case,
Yeah.
And Quentin Tarantino, in fact, is going to retire and start writing novels. So it's like,
right.
It's kind of his style anyway.
But if you look at something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, one of the things that justifies a longer runtime is that the characters are A, super engaging, and B, there are plenty of them.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, I'm equally invested in both of these characters. So if you want to have them on independent journeys and show me both of those things with equal screen time, of course the film is going to be longer. But I'm okay with it because I like the characters and there's plenty of them. You know, we talked about Lord of the Rings a minute ago. There's 9 members of the Fellowship. It justifies having a longer runtime just because it has more characters.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that it also has a very deep, lore-rich world.
Yep.
And a complex set of circumstances with this war. But more characters and more engaging characters means longer screen time.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'd have to pull this up to verify. And I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to compare 2 films here.
It's also a big responsibility too. Like, it's not just about, okay, I've got enough material, it needs to be this long. It's also like, okay, well, now my job is to make that length not feel so long. You know?
Right.
That's part of why I can watch a 3.5 hour extended edition of Fellowship, because it's got all this cool lore and detail that I want. And that makes the book better. And, you know, and we've said before, like, I love all 3 screenplay adaptations of these movies, and they are superior, in my opinion, writing to the books themselves, to Tolkien's books. I'm about to start reading the 3rd book, but Two Towers takes a big dip from Fellowship on the book. Just real quick, because they structure it like half of, you know, Lord of the Rings is 6 books technically, right? Mm-hmm. Each title is book 1 and book 2. And then, so book 3, you know, the first half of Two Towers is just Aragorn, and like, it's just the rest of Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Helm's Deep, Rohan, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then book 4, the second half, is Sam and Frodo and Smeagol. Like the events of the film here, and then the events of the film here. And it's much better as an intercut narrative on screen to have them progressing together and not just, you know what I mean? Like, that's an obvious example. But anyways, the point being that adaptation works better, and you keep the lore and you keep my attention at the same time. And that's just good writing, good material, but overall good direction.
It's true. So I was going to compare 2 films from 2008, Iron Man and The Dark Knight. So The Dark Knight is basically an extra half hour in length.
Whoa.
But one of the reasons that it can justify that is, at least in my mind, its characters. So if you look at Iron Man, in my mind, Tony is about the only really explored character in that film.
Yeah.
Maybe Pepper to an extent, but mostly just Tony. And in The Dark Knight, you've got Bruce, you've got Gordon, you've got Dent, you've got Joker. And each of these characters needs that time, needs that extra time.
Yeah.
And so just if you compare those 2 films, you can see the scope of The Dark Knight is wider in breadth than Iron Man.
Yeah.
So its longer runtime is justified. If it had been as equally narrow as Iron Man, then it should not be that length, because you can tell the story of Tony Stark in 2 hours. You don't need that extra half hour for any reason. And so I think adding characters is good, and fantasy stories, sci-fi stories are really generally ensemble films, at least to some degree. So that justifies that. It's also interesting when you start factoring in episodic drama TV series that you know, they run 40, 45 minutes per episode, where you want to think, okay, well, you can tell your story very quickly, or you can draw it out over 6 seasons, and each approach is fine. You just have to make sure you have enough story to tell. So on the podcast, we talk a lot about Breaking Bad. It's the easiest thing for me to break down. But like Breaking Bad obviously tells the story of Walter White. But if you think about what if Breaking Bad had been just one movie, right? What if they had just made it into one movie?
Mm-hmm.
It would literally have to just be the story of Walter White.
Yeah.
Because it's a TV show, it can be the story of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman and Skylar White and Hank Schrader and Gus Fring and Mike Ehrmantraut. It can be all of these stories.
Yeah.
But that's where, like, to me, that's the big distinguishing factor of these films is, does it have enough interesting characters to hold my attention? Not is the story complex enough to receive extra time. It's, are the characters all really strong and you're utilizing the extra time to build my investment in those characters. If you're using the extra time to build my investment in your world, I don't care. If you're using the extra time to build my investment in your story, in your plot, I probably don't care. If you're using that time to allow me to invest in your characters, bingo, now I care. And that's a weird line to draw, like, but I do find myself caring more for characters than plot. So if all you're doing is showing me, you know, why the war for the ring is happening and who, you know, and who it's happening to, but I don't have any investment in the who, then Lord of the Rings might as well be a short movie. But because I do care about the Fellowship, and I do care about Theoden, and I do care about Faramir, and I do care about, you know, even Denethor, like, because I care about watching all of these and I'm invested in all of these people, it justifies that time. So I always look at character. If it's a long enough movie, you mentioned Ford versus Ferrari. Love that movie. It's a character movie to me.
Yeah.
And that's why it can justify a longer screen time.
It's funny because there's definitely people who will just look at the runtime and go, nope.
Yeah.
You know, but like a lot of one of my favorite movies, Zodiac. Zodiac's long. And I was actually looking for a Blu-ray of it, and there's like a director's cut out too. And so I don't know I don't know which one to get, you know? Yeah, it's crazy. So anyways, I'm trying to, that's like a big to do for me right now is, what do I get?
What do I do?
But
I'm trying to see what I have. I think I don't know which one I have.
But like, regardless, like it's a long film, and it's like, but again, like you can't, I don't believe you can tell that story as well with all the characters that are involved without that runtime. Like you just need it. And a good director can take on that kind of material. That's why, like, even stuff you could watch a film like Gladiator and be like, all right, love Ridley Scott, love the movie, but you could make an argument that like it's just a little long. Maybe it's not paced well, sure. Whatever. Like maybe just, you know, maybe we got too much like, you know, kind of woozy walking, you know,
sure.
Too much, whatever. Like the whole point is it's all about pace and attention, and there are often, like, one of the things that keeps Interstellar engaging for me is, other than like just visuals, is the score. That's why you can have so many like shots of just stuff that they're seeing and not be like, all right, enough already. Cause you're like, whoa, that does look cool. And then the music's going, you're like, oh, it sounds cool too. That's pretty cool. And and then we hear from Matthew McConaughey's family and you're like, oh man, that's cool too. So it's all of it. But yeah, it just got me thinking. I was just thinking about it a lot lately. And especially the more books the more fiction I read, the more I just think about structure, and movies in general these days are skewing longer because for not always for the right reasons. Sometimes it's just we're making them longer because we want them to be and feel epic. But that's not even in the best interests of the films, because then it's so long that you can't show it a certain amount of times in a day, and so it's going to make less money.
Right.
So it's like it's just a weird push and pull of the commerce of the thing. Like, we want it to feel epic, and so it needs to be 3 hours long so that people forget it's just a superhero film. But again, films like Infinity War Endgame probably justifies the length. So many characters. Sure. But a single film like Thor: The Dark World doesn't need to be more than 2 hours. Thor: Love and Thunder didn't need to be over 2 hours. Actually, I don't think it was. Hold on, that might be a bad example.
Yeah, I remember that being short.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Ant-Man Quantumania didn't need to be over 2 hours.
Ant-Man Quantumania didn't need to be 60 seconds.
you would have preferred a quantum length in that film.
Yeah, for sure. And done.
A quantum leap off a building.
That's what it made me want to do.
Anyway, yeah. So that's it. I just wanted to discuss that.
Yeah.
See where you're at.
I will say, as somebody with limited free time, it is always nice when I look at a film and it has a short runtime and I'm like, oh, cool, I could knock that out. That is nice.
Yeah.
But a long runtime is not a detriment.
No.
It just means I'm going to have to watch it in pieces.
I tend to have these days, it's weird. I have both reactions. I have the, oh shit, this is going to be 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I also have, if it's like 90 minutes, I go, is there enough here for me?
Yeah.
Like I immediately am skeptical of the film's substance. Like,
yeah, sure.
Like maybe the formula has worked on me, but like I look at it and go, is this just gonna be dumb? Like a light 90 minutes? I don't want that.
Yeah, a little farce.
Yeah, but when you see like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, you're like, this is gonna have a lot of stuff. This is gonna be meaty. Right.
Yeah.
Sure. But then maybe when you're like an hour through it, you're like, fuck.
Oh, so bored. Hour. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Like when I was watching The Irishman. God.
Yeah. No, I remember watching The Irishman and just being like, oh my gosh.
So long.
I don't remember much about that movie because I think I was so focused on like, why is it taking so long?
Why am I forcing this?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's also like Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm like, again, I know I just said characters, and that has characters, but I don't care about them. So I'm like, why does this have to be so long? Why do you have to spend an hour just on like some past fight with the Amazons? Golly, dude.
We know they get the box out of there. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
So, all right, everyone.
Sweet. Well, go watch a movie.
Maybe and tell us how long. Tell us the runtime, or we'll look at the runtime. I guess you don't have to do that.
Tell us how long it was before you looked at your watch.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And tell us
if
you
or paused it to pee or any. If you pause it, that counts as looking at your watch.
Yeah. How many PPs would you give the movie? Because if it's 5 PPs, that's either a long movie.
How many potty breaks?
You got a small bladder, or it wasn't very good.
Or a bad movie. Yep, that's right.
All right,
that's right. A snack break counts as 2 PPs.
Now it's like my son is potty training. He's potty trained. So, but like if he poops, I give him 4 Whoppers, and if he pees, I give him 2 Whoppers. If he
the malted milk balls, not the entire Burger King sandwich.
My son is that guy from the Popeye comics. Yeah, the malted milk ball. I was, you know what? There was I had a sitter over here at one point, and I was explaining this to her, like the Whoppers system, and she was like, I said, and she was like, oh wow, I didn't. My only person I hear talk about Whoppers is my grandpa. She's like, where'd you get Whoppers? And I was like, Target.
I haven't looked
went
at
down
Whoppers
to the
in a long
corner
time.
drugstore.
The first time I had Whoppers, and most of the times I ever had Whoppers, was from my grandfather.
I've only bought them to potty, but for some reason, all 3 of my sons are super into Whoppers.
Okay.
I hear that word in my house every fucking day.
Whoppers.
Yeah. Noah loved Whoppers. Oliver's loving Whoppers. Now Riley's going like, oh, Whopper. I Whoppers. I'm like, okay. I want Whoppers too.
Right,
I get Whoppers too, Daddy. And I'm like, I can't believe y'all are begging me for Whoppers.
Whoppers of all things.
In 2024.
I was going to say, what is this, 1907?
You want a 10-cent haircut too?
Extra, read all about it.
You want a newspaper?
Local dad has Whoppers.
You want an Archie comic? Some
Beetle Bailey?
Yeah. You want you want some asbestos? Hey kid, you want a cigarette?
It has asbestos in it.
No filters, just asbestos.
No filters, just asbestos. As the good Lord intended.
You want some scotch, kid?
Extra, everyone's sick.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Extra, everyone's sick.